Hi, Stefan here with Chatbots Life, and today I'm meeting with Ricardo, good friend of mine.
Hello.
Ricardo, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Originally from New York, I've been in San Francisco for about 4 years. I started VOIQ. We focus on helping businesses leveraging VoiceBots to enrich the way that they communicate with their customers and prospects over the phone.
Got it. That's very exciting. I remember the first time you told me the use case, and the part that got me most excited was that you were actually delivering an actual business result in voice, which was like a year ago. It was very, very early on. So can you tell us a little bit about what are companies doing in voice right now, and then what are some of the best use cases? Where are they seeing traction? And then also for the consumer later on, you could show us that side as well.
For sure. So in the expertise that we have, we focus on the call channel, but I can tell you more at macro level, at the business level.
Yeah.
There's several ways that AI voice has started to make its way into business. It's gone really far into our homes, right?
Right.
From the ways that we interact with everything around us. But in business, it hasn't gotten there yet. And some of the most interesting ways in which AI voice is going to be transforming the way we work in the business, you have AI voice as a dashboard, you have AI voice as a meeting assistant, you have AI voice as a search and navigation, you have AI voice as what we do in the call channel. Basically sounding like human and talking, having conversation with your customers. And then you have AI voice to voice authentication, so replacing passwords. So there's just a huge universe of really exciting AI voice innovations in the workplace coming up. And I would say the AI voice in the meeting space, companies like Chorus and Gong, translating stuff, annotating your conversations in meetings so you don't have to. It's probably one of the most obvious use cases that I see that are very exciting in the workplace.
Got it. So it seems like there's a bunch of different silos or categories within voice itself. So on the front end or the consumer side, it's how people are using Siri or Google Home. And they're using it kind of for, Google dim my lights or change the channel. And then slowly you're moving towards Google Analytics being more voice or text prompt. So there's okay, how much did my ads make yesterday, for example, or what was the traffic to our website, right? And then you go a step further, it's on the back end within companies, they're keeping track of voice meetings that they're having with each other, et cetera.
Yep, correct. I mean, you see this evolution happening, like you said, from sort of some of the more obvious scenarios where businesses are kind of building their own applications in consumer type of hardware,
right?
Mostly consumer facing, and then you're starting seeing them building applications in the back end, which is internal applications for the way that their colleagues collaborate inside engineering teams, knowledge repositories where anyone can go and ask where this project is, and with more privacy behind and specific hardware. So there's several companies tackling kind of the Alexa for business, and that is the next level.
That is so. So how far along are we within the life cycle? Is this still really, really early on in terms of back end use cases for voice bots, or are they going to town right now? Is it ramping up?
Super early.
It's
early. It's day one. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, just one of my mentors who's considered the father of speech recognition, Dr. Nahamo, he's at the company called Prion, and they're working on the Alexa for business, which is a little bit of everything that you can imagine.
Okay.
Voice dashboards asking whether you're the CEO, whether you are a sales leader, whatever it is, asking for specific information and not having to go through visual dashboards to pull this information. And that's a brand new company started maybe a year ago. So there's a ton of new companies building hardware, software that are behind sort of the firewall of business, aside from what you know of consumer applications that your bank setting up an application in a Google Assistant so you can ask for your balance. That's more consumer facing.
Right.
But for business, it's day one.
That's so amazing. So you're talking B2E stuff.
That's correct.
Oh, wow. So I remember maybe 2 years ago, year and a half ago, we were seeing the same sort of trend on chatbots, where you're seeing more and more really good use cases for backend for enterprises. And so the enterprises started building out all these RPAs And basically like chat assistants, like password reset was like a good example, or HR bot where you would text it, hey, I'm sick today, or I'm not going to be able to make it to work tomorrow, or I was sick last Wednesday, can you make it a sick day instead of like a vacation day, for example? Or, you know, can I get a copy of my W-2s, right? And now it seems like all those back-end use cases are also, we're starting to see voice penetrate many of those.
Completely. Yep, that's exactly the direction. I guess chatbot, it's the precursor to voice.
Right.
In order to make that voice conversion, you need a couple of more additional layers of technology that we're not necessarily there yet. And, you know, speech to text, text to speech, and AI have made it possible for not only speech to text, text to speech, but of course the NLP that actually powers chatbots. So when you bring those all together, and telephony, in our case, you have this magic moment where for the first time you actually are able to take it to the next level, sort of like what you're describing, chatbots initially being able to do these applications. Now it's how do we take it to the next level and take it to the auditory component? How do you talk to and get this information delivered to you by just telling you over voice?
I see. And then on the front end, on the consumer side, like how much of a discovery channel is voice going to become in the future? I know that's kind of like a loaded question in a way, but we're seeing more and more companies like, you know, set up shop on Google Voice or Alexa, but to some extent, it's also kind of like a winner take all, right? Like, how many plumbers are you going to ask Alexa for? Like, if you're you know, if you have a plumbing issue, you have a leak, you don't want to talk to 5, you want just the best one.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, and I see that more on the consumer side. I mean, business, this is more like a business application. How do you get your business on a consumer hardware so people can find you when they're looking for your type of business? And the answer on that, brand and omni-channel, being in every single channel promoting a brand, is what's going to differentiate you, right? If you're going to order, I don't know, a pack of nails in Amazon, you're probably going to buy Amazon basic nails. But if you're looking for like ibuprofen, you're probably not going to get Amazon ibuprofen. You're probably asking for Tylenol, right? And so that's where the brand and making sure that people understand the value of your product through multiple channels, not just being present in the audio sort of you know, voice channel is important. So from that kind of consumer interaction standpoint, it's very important. Maintaining a brand or building a brand has never been more important, because then you land in the problem that you just mentioned, right? You know, I just need a plumber. Well, you're gonna get, I don't know, the equivalent of Amazon basic plumber, right? if you ask in Alexa.
It's funny because at one point, Amazon was getting into home services. And there's a bunch of companies like that, like Thumbtack. So you want a plumber and they'll introduce you to 5. But I think with some of these maybe like local services that you don't care whether it's John or Jim, it's going to just be automated to a large degree. And then, but I'm also thinking of like 1-800-Flowers. Like they were one of the biggest companies to jump into chatbots and then into voice, right? And because the invocation word is going to be something like, I want flowers or I need flowers, right? Hopefully you get to a point where it's Kleenex and it's like, you're by virtue calling out the brand name. But if you're not, like, how do you think it's going to work out in the future where, you know, maybe the person's not invoking a brand name, they're just saying, hey, I want pizza or I want flowers, then who gets to win that search result?
I think we've seen this before through new channels, and brand always kind of wins. That's kind of like the first level of defense, right? But I see search and navigation more from the business lens of how does it play behind that sort of firewall in business. And one of the coolest use cases is, for example, the designers working with stock photography and being able to, instead having to look through stock photography on their laptop, they're able to speak to the screen. Like Adobe stock photography works like this, so you can actually search and navigate and say, in a collaborative group of designers, they can just talk to the screen and say, show me a horse pulling a carriage, making them brown, making instead of 1, make them 7, right? And everyone's talking to. So that's the equivalent of search navigation from the business side. On the consumer side, you land on that, you know, more like shopping, and that's how we know the current hardware, because we just haven't yet gotten the equivalent behind the
I
walls
see.
of the business. But I mean, yeah, to answer your question, it's going to be very difficult, and that's why it's no coincidence that the owners of the hardware are Amazon, the biggest marketplace, and
Yep.
Google, the biggest advertising company.
Exactly.
But this is not new to products. They're going to just have to be even better at promoting themselves through multiple different channels. Voice is going to be just one. It's going to be very powerful, but not necessarily everyone will be ordering flowers through your. I mean, we all know there's going to be huge, right? But there's still plenty of channels to buy flowers, right?
Right.
So
You can't see them in voice.
exactly, right, exactly.
Yeah.
You put a lot of trust ordering your flowers through an Amazon Echo, but yeah. So, but I get the point, and it is going to be difficult. And Gary Vee is probably one of the big proponents of making sure that your
brand's on there.
Yeah, your brand is out there. Otherwise, and that you get yourself to build these consumer-facing applications as fast as possible, so you get better at it. And you get out of the way what works, what doesn't work, and provide value add to the customers through different channels.
So one of the other ways that I think about voice, and maybe you've come across this, but I don't know if any brands are really doing this actively, and that is as a learning channel. So for example, like let's say that you were the NFL, right? You can create like a little game on voice or a Q&A or an FAQ voice bot. And so every time someone says something like, hey, who's Tom Brady? Or how many touchdowns has Tom Brady thrown? Or something like this. Now you have this piece of information that, John in Boston has questions about Brady. Maybe, just maybe, he wants to buy a jersey someday.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's continuing the collecting intelligence on everyone on their queries that they do through voice, which is yet another channel that they can do that. So for sure, that's one of the big reasons why we have the Google Assistant. But for sure, I mean, I agree. That's a huge use case for the hardware component of it.
Yeah. Are brands using it this way yet, or are they just starting to, or is it like becoming common?
I recently was listening to an Acquired episode of the podcast Acquire, and they're talking about Google Maps and how long it took to monetize Google Maps, and how long they're starting to use Google Maps now for advertising and for location, all this stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to see voice go through a similar segment, right? Initially, it's like, well, let's see how people interact, like how, Brady's, question about somebody, and then that means that they're more likely to buy this type of shirt or whatever. Yeah. Initially, I think there's a strong effort in collecting that intelligence, but I don't think yet they have moved. They just stepped on the gas for the type of adoption that it will have, and I'm sure they're ramping up for that, and I'm sure it will be heavily monetized. For now, the back-end companies are for sure working on that. On the business side, they're just trying to figure it out what type of interactive voice applications they can do that people use. I mean, there's some really huge brands out there creating some applications that have, like national brands, like stores that are, everywhere, and they create an app and they have like 20 users, right? So, I'm talking about big brands.
I know what you mean.
And so, and they're being pitched by these large companies, Google, Amazon, blah, blah. Hey, we have this great idea. How about we create? And they're like, well, that's awesome, but we have like 20 users on the last one. So like, should we even be doing this, right? And going back to what Gary Vee says, right? Like, you can't just give up just because you have 20 users. You got to continue at it. You have to build more applications, et cetera. But you definitely have huge national brands with huge budgets trying a couple things here and there, and they have like 5 users asking them questions on their application because they're creating the V1 version 1 of their voice applications, which it's with the lack of understanding of what is it that people actually care about seeing in this medium, right? Yeah. So super early as well on that from that end.
One of the best use cases I've seen for voice, and was wildly popular, it was a veterinarian. So you can ask the bot questions about your dog, or your cat or whatever animal you have at home, and then it would like try to help you. And then if you needed to like book an appointment, buy a doggy biscuit, whatever the natural solution was, it would provide that for you. And it seemed like one of those things that was like a very natural extension of the things that would happen to you every day at home, right? Like if you have a kid or if you have a dog or if you have a refrigerator and you run out of eggs, like there's certain things that are just happening to all of us all the time. And I think that to some degree, like voice for the consumer, it's going to reflect that in a very heavy way, you know, and then maybe you buy your flowers, you know, for your wife like 3 times a year, and then that'll be reflected in that same way, you know.
Hopefully, there's a little bit more effort than just telling your Alexa to buy flowers by such date.
So let's talk a little bit more about the back end, because I think that's like your expertise.
Yep.
So tell me stuff that's the most interesting, exciting to you, and where the market's now, where it's going, etc.
Yeah, so I mean, going back to the question, to the example you just mentioned, like consumer versus business. Or, on the consumer side, something extremely exciting and super advanced is Google Assistant making appointments on behalf of the consumer to get a haircut or to have restaurant reservations, right? That type of stuff. That's super advanced. That's super cool for the consumer. You don't have anything close to that yet on the business side.
Okay.
It's kind of day one. The closest that it gets is sort of, you know, if we're going to talk about marrying all of these technologies, you know, telephony and everything that's involved in having a voice bot call on your behalf to a human to set up like a hair appointment, right? That's extremely complex. If we bring that into the equivalent of business, we're not there yet, but, you know, we're definitely using, I mean, like what we do in our company, we are using the same concept, the same technology, but applied to like sales and marketing, but it's still so early, right? So in the consumer side, you see it pretty out there, way more evolved, whereas the business cases are just starting to grow. Like sales and marketing, usually customer support, that's usually where you start seeing it, but it's still super early, which is really exciting for us because that's our space.
Right.
Yeah, that's a space leveraging, like I said, voice plus like telephony. But you can do the parallel with pretty much every single segment, like hardware, you know, anything you see around your home. And that hasn't yet happened in the business, which is really exciting, and it will happen, right? So yeah.
So that's very exciting though, because usually that's the thing that no one sees because it's back-end use cases, and they end up being like the most common and popular. And they have like instant ROI or very quick ROI compared to front end. Are you seeing that? Whereas companies have like, they can employ this sort of technology and then have pretty good return on investment fairly quickly? Yeah,
I mean, I think when you look at AI voice, businesses, they need immediate ROI. You know, there's a time for them to kind of play around with it, but if they see that this is immediate ROI, they're going to invest, and they're going to start, you know, running pilots, etc. So for sure, I mean, immediate ROI, I would say, like I said, usually revenue generating areas like sales and marketing are the first ones to go after the technology, to adopt technology, and then also how to prevent customers from churning, right? So it's customer support, et cetera, right? So those are the first two that probably jump at it at every chance you get. And you definitely have when voice bots on customer service can provide a better experience to their customers and prospectively prevent them from being frustrated and stop being customers, right? And it costs them very little to maintain them and to retain them. That's like a no-brainer. So voice bots already are making their way in that direction. But in the example of sales and meetings, for example, annotating all the contents of meetings, kind of like companies like Chorus and Gong, they are powered by sales teams that want to really get to the nitty-gritty of what is happening during a conversation when you do a sales call. And you know, everything's tagged, and it tells you these are the areas where the leaders are able to see and train appropriately their teams and saying, look, this area where you should be closing, you're not closing enough, right? Like, so anything is revenue generating, and you bring technologies like this that can understand language and turning to text and then, you know, map it out for you. It's an immediate hit, and you know, these two companies are an example of that, Gong and Chorus.
Got it. And then, do you know of any companies that are also doing like a voice analysis? So, for example, the content of what the salesperson might be saying might be like spot on, but then maybe like his delivery or the way he's communicating the words is
that's
like,
a great point, because that is what comes next. So they're now leveraging technology. They can capture everything that is being said by multiple stakeholders in a meeting. The next level is coaching you on how to have better meetings, right? And that's where we're going. And the space of AI voice, it's so early that, I mean, I learn every 2 weeks of 1 or 2 companies that come out to create one specific product in one channel. So you have several companies creating just synthetic voices. And you have several companies just focusing on cloning your own voice, right?
interesting.
You have specific companies just analyzing what you just mentioned, analyzing the voice data of several inputs, right? So you have several silos that each company is choosing to just be doing, that is what they do, right? And many of these silos are brand new, and some have existed already, but now you just have companies that are looking to be billion-dollar companies just doing that one single thing in a market of voice that is just going to explode over the next decade.
Do you think that there's more potential in voice than chatbots in text?
I think they both complement each other. And like I said, voice is one step in terms of complexity. It's a little bit farther from chatbots, but the infrastructure underneath is very similar. You rely on NLP, natural language processing. You need to understand what is in text, right? If you don't understand what's in text, and you can't do voice, you can't do chatbots, right? So at the heart of it is the same technology. It's just a voice. You're basically when you bring something to AI voice, you are preventing somebody to just relying on manual input and visual input, right? And now you need just yet another sense, but you can do it all through voice and by hearing the answers, right? So you're definitely freeing a category by leveraging AI voice. So it's definitely, it will have a huge impact, but I would say it's complementary. I wouldn't necessarily, it's better than chatbots. Different use cases, and you need them both.
I see. So one of the things that I think is, I think we're already seeing a little bit, especially like with Alexa and Google Home, is that in certain use cases, like voice is all you need, and sometimes it's all you want. Like if you're driving behind a car, and you're like, play that next song, or something like you don't want a visual, a GUI to distract you. But then sometimes, like, when you're ordering flowers, that GUI really is going to help, right? So are you seeing like a GUI coming into voice at all? Do you see any? Completely.
I mean, the example that I mentioned about designers leveraging Adobe's stock photography, that's an example, right? You're talking and you say, show me this, show me that, and it's kind of showing you exactly what you want. So that's more navigation AI voice. Versus, like you mentioned, the example of driving directions from the consumer side, or you could be driving and saying, what are Diane's sales numbers from yesterday, right? You don't necessarily need to go and pull up your phone. You definitely don't want to do that. And go into an app and like do a query for Diane's sales numbers from yesterday, right?
Correct.
Very, very dangerous. But you will be able to do this while you're driving. I mean, very American, probably, thinking about working while you're driving, but still not a European problem, I'm sure. But yeah, it's a huge impact. Two different things, right? Complementing visual with navigation or just auditory commands.
So tell me a little bit more about like the specific problems that you guys are solving and what you're really focusing on right now.
Yeah, so right now we are solving we're helping businesses leverage VoiceBots for sales and marketing calls. I mean, there's definitely use cases. We're working, several companies working leveraging VoiceBots in different areas. And we're a SaaS platform. And so any sales or manager, director, anybody who's used to running email campaigns, like email automation, now suddenly for the first time in the history of sales and marketing, they have access to a whole new channel, which is calling. And now they control the flow and the automation of calls within all the workflow, where they can control chatbots, they can control emails, they can control text. So it's a whole new channel that opens up for these email automation or marketing automation experts, sales. The word automation in the title, that's who we love to talk to. We live in the workflow, and we just give you the ability through a SaaS platform to just deploy calls carried out by VoiceBots in 100,000 different use cases. Sales and marketing happen to be the most logical ones because they're revenue generating, but we have customers using it for a million different things.
Got it. So last question, what are your top 2 or 3 insights in terms of voice? And you can think of it in terms of like something that you would tell enterprises or consumers or a client of yours or maybe a friend that you're really close to and you're like, hey, you really should pay attention to this. Like what would those 2 or 3 things be?
Yeah, from the business facing consumer through like the Alexas of the world and Google Assistants, but the advice would be very, very close to Gary's V's advice, which is you need to be creating applications. I know that even if you have like 5 users, doesn't matter, don't be discouraged. This is a 5-year investment. Keep trying and you need to be there, right? That would be one of them, but from behind kind of the firewall, behind when you're behind doors in business, I would for sure encourage leaders in business to be trying the latest technology in AI voice because they could make a huge difference in the bottom line of their teams or their business. And many of these products are incredibly, they're not expensive. And the impact that they can bring to your organization is huge. So any of the companies that kind of mentioned, that are in the space, it's early, so no, it's not going to be perfect. None of them are perfect, right? None of the technologies that I've mentioned here are perfect. But the moment that they are, your organization will be fully equipped to run with it and will have a tremendous advantage over the competition. So I always encourage them to, be early adopters, put it somewhere, test it, make sure that you
get it going
because it takes time to know how to navigate even the technology behind your organization. So just to give you a quick example, with what we do is VoiceBots for calling. You have experts in sales and marketing knowing how to send emails, effective emails, right? If the subject line is horrible, no one's going to open your email,
Exactly.
right?
And you're always tracking it.
Yeah, exactly. The first line, if the first line of email is not good, no one's going to read the second, right? So now the same people that are experts in email are doing calls powered by VoiceBots, and they have never ran a telemarketing team, right? Where the same rules apply. The opening line is as important as the next line that the VoiceBot is going to say in order to engage the customer and take care of it, right? So they need to learn how to run this whole new channel that they never had to. Similar to chatbots, right? With chatbots, there is an art and a science to ask the customer when they go into your site, right? There's a learning curve. You don't want to be a late adopter of a chatbot on your property, your business, where all your competitors are already welcoming and providing an amazing experience to the consumers when they go on the site and the chatbot talks and have a great conversation and knows exactly what they're looking for, has all the information, it looks like magic, right? And suddenly you go there and you have like the chatbot that is like,
it sucks.
right. So you don't want to be one of those businesses. So for sure, early adoption of these technologies would be a huge, big piece of advice.
Got it. Okay. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? If they want to learn more about your company, what would you?
Sure. So voiq.com, and my email is ricardo@voiq.com. Shoot me an email.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, guys, for watching. And to learn more about voice, follow us at Chatbots Life and also the Chatbot Conference. Have a great rest of your day.